want to bring in back our panel in here right now. One of the things they talked about was the race issue. And at one point when they were talking about the African-American community, Hillary Clinton was talking about Donald Trump's take on the African-American community. At one point you saw him sort of grunt and moan, almost in the way that Al Gore had that sigh moment. I want to ask you, Leslie, how difficult was conveying that sense of race, especially when he talked about stop and frisk? Was that damaging for him tonight?
It wasn't helpful. He started on the wrong foot. He was definitely on his heels on that issue when he talked about, you know, being in hell and like bad neighborhoods that were African American and Hispanic. That's not a good welcoming line for pretty much anybody. And he had to dig himself out of the hole with that. I think you lost a lot of people on the merits of it. And that was consistent in what he did, which is why it was a missed opportunity. The crime bill, there was a perfect opportunity for him to transition and talk about under her, you know, under President Clinton at the time. You had the crime bill, which many in the African American community feel that the penalties were too high in terms of, you know, criminalizing lower level offenses, and it really hurt a lot in the minority community. There were just so many missed opportunities like that, but particularly on race, where you have to be very careful. You have to think of the community holistically. It's not just crime, it's economic opportunity, access to capital, all those other areas.
And you just saw in that focus group that Frank was conducting there, that one voter said that, you know, he lost me when it came to that question about race. And Anthony, as we were watching these voters, as Frank polled them, I thought the first thing that struck me is that when he said Hillary Clinton, they kind of, maybe, and their hands went up very slowly, which made me think that that is exactly how the electorate feels about her. There are some people who, you know, they don't really like her and they don't really like Trump, but they're reluctantly going to go along because of some of the things that perhaps they heard tonight.
We do see that in the aggregate, right? We talked coming into this about how she had to fire up her supporters because they were with her, but they were saying they were not as enthusiastic. You know, I noticed tonight both of them going after what each other's perceived weaknesses were, the weaknesses we've seen coming out of the polling. So notice when he said politicians like, you know, Hillary Clinton, that's because you've got this big push for change out there in the electorate, and he was trying to tie her to politics as usual, which some of her detractors say they see in her, and then in turn for her, it's going after his business acumen. He says he's a businessman, therefore he can be a good president, and she's pushing on things like the tax returns to try to say, well, maybe you're not as good as you make it out. So each of them going after those central weaknesses that we've seen in the electorate already coming into this. It's probably no surprise they've both been talking to pollsters before they come in and do this.